Anthony, first of all, I always love spending time with you, but thanks for taking a few minutes to come on here.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. So we can go right into it because you are a wealth of knowledge in this industry and you keep really good tabs on things. So sort of where do you see the year so far?
It's certainly an interesting year. I think when we started off, things weren't quite so smooth and we were staring down the barrel of rather an awkward year. But first quarter, there's a lot of unrest on a sort of global basis, and that has driven a change in the trade. And I think the surprise for everyone was after 2 p.m. the market really hardened, and then on May 1, I think after May 1 the market just exploded, and it was very unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
But kept shipping in a healthy in a healthy place throughout 2024, I think. And as I said, unexpected. I think the carriers have slightly been given a get out of jail card because of the huge overcapacity issue with new vessels being delivered in 2024 and 25. There were projected huge losses.
So you think the fact that the losses were projected but haven't materialized because people have decided to say, okay, it's not fair if they take such big hits?
No, I think because of the the geopolitical issues, the freight rates have remained high, and the shipping industry has been able to remain profitable. What potentially could have been a very negative market, and I think everyone was expecting to take massive losses in 2024 and 25, to be able to take one of those years and turn it into what I'm assuming from the asset side is a big profit year.
Right.
Really to be massive, get out of jail card, because obviously you have these two years back to back with huge deliveries coming in. Well, obviously our industry is always going to make money based on the supply and demand equation. Mm-hmm. When demand is high and supply is insufficient, the rates remain high and everyone's very profitable.
Right.
When that reverse flips,
things change.
So to be able to, because after COVID, there was so much money in circulation, and obviously the asset people will go out and buy assets with it because they've been starving for a long period of time. But it just means that you then have all these assets delivering at the same time, and it's difficult to digest
in one in a moment.
Capacity. So we were looking at 24, 25, and then perhaps some kind of supply and demand, parity or equilibrium happening in around 27.
Okay. So you think it's going to take that long until we get there?
Yeah. So to get rid of those 2 worst years, potentially was I think is very healthy for the industry as a whole.
Sure.
So for how many years did we struggle pre-COVID?
Oh yeah, forever.
Forever, and it just means bad service. It just means old ships. It just means not sufficient money in circulation to keep promoting infrastructural improvement,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera.
Do you see? Because you also mentioned the geopolitical issues and how that changes things. Are people sourcing from newer markets or different markets, or is it still the same?
No, I think interestingly there. We can't pretend that there is not some kind of trade decoupling that's happening between China and US for a multitude of reasons. I think one of the obvious ones that we learned in COVID, we just can't, as a country, put all our eggs in one basket.
Right.
So if we want the supply chain to be more resilient, we clearly become over-dependent on one source. Forget all the other political, motivations. So there's definitely, I think a sense from customers in America to say, well, we need a bit more resilience in our supply chain. The only way to do that is to take some of the sourcing out of just one country and have a little bit more backup to the China factory plan.
Yeah.
So the obvious play for that to cascade from was to go into Southeast Asia and West Asia.
Mm-hmm.
The assumption now is that America then is going to go and manufacture a lot in Latin America and Mexico, which obviously America's quite fortunate to have on its border,
Yeah.
and very close, and maybe some more from transatlantic Eastern Europe.
Okay.
But I think we're as of yet to see those,
I was going to say, people have been talking about Mexico for a very long time, but it doesn't ever seem to really change.
I think it's undoubtable now. We've seen massive import trade, and it's where every carrier is focusing their attention. And there's so many factories that are shipping from China, their whole factory, to Mexico.
Oh.
And it takes them a bit of time, 1, 2, 3 years, to set up the new factory, train people, get production ramped up, get on top of the quality control, et cetera, et cetera. Many of these factories are actually still owned by the Chinese factory.
They're just now sitting in Mexico.
Yeah, they're sitting in Mexico to get around future tariff issues, future.
So they're being a little bit. They're thinking out a bit.
In the same way that China also moves their factories from China also to Vietnam, it's still a Chinese factory.
Right.
It's just beating the country of origin.
Okay.
Restrictions, yeah.
So I know that you're also you're big into your relationships. You have your ocean carriers you work with and your other partners. But I'm curious to get your take on how, especially in the craziness of where this market has been and changed, how partnerships, and I'm not asking you to pick anyone out in particular, but just how partnerships as opposed to sort of transactional type work with people, because I've always felt that you're a partnership kind of person.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably this focus on partnership and relationship is probably gives away our age, Mark.
Okay.
But I think there's no denying that the marketplace is slowly changing, and it is becoming increasingly more transactional. However, there's a huge section of the market that relies fundamentally on relationship. And remember, what we do is B2B.
Yeah.
It's not, and B2B is always relationship based.
I would agree.
In its DNA. Every time, having a transactional relationship with and no human contact or no personal relationship in this business, it's fine for when there's not a problem.
Right.
But as soon as there's a problem, and you want to go and fix it without a relationship, it's very hard to do. And I think we measure our success and our quality based on how we solve problems rather than how we, get the normal right when that's the expected norm.
Right. And so, like at Cargomatic, we appreciate our relationship with OEC, and those relationships are important. I will say, and I don't mean with OEC, but there are people, there are businesses out there, and maybe they do think transactional. So you probably see it sometimes with some of your customers too, where something goes wrong. Oh, I'm just moving on, or I'm going for the lowest dollar at all costs, no matter what. Even if I'll blow up the relationship over a nickel. I do feel like some of that's out there.
Yeah, I kind of feel slightly the reverse.
Okay.
I feel when there is a problem is when the customer comes to find you and need you the most.
Fair, I'll give you that.
And when things are going absolutely fine and they don't value the relationship.
That's when it's a nickel.
Yeah, and then it becomes all about a nickel.
Okay.
And then it's a nickel here, nickel there, nickel here, nickel there. And you keep reminding them, remember, the day will come when a problem happens and you really need somebody to help you. After all, we don't have to look back too far to COVID.
Sure.
When everyone was in trouble, and the only people that really got out of trouble, those that invested, properly in their relationships.
Yeah.
And so they got as much help as they possibly could have, and that was a big, differentiator between them and the no relationship guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Post-COVID, it didn't take us long to forget that. Suddenly everyone was rate this, rate that, and we saw the rates absolutely plummet. into car crash, into car crash territory, and the industry is sadly, back into losing money. And then all of a sudden, we have a disruption at the beginning of this year, and suddenly we see ocean freight zoom back up. Obviously, not up to COVID levels, but certainly triple or quadruple any other year that we've ever had except for COVID. So not even 18 months have passed, and our supposed 100-year wave was back again. So I think anyone's going to bet that they're going to not face a problem again in 5 years. I think it's a very bad bet.
What's it ever going to take for us to get away from this sort of boom and bust cycles and actually just say, here's a fair rate for the service being provided, and this is what I'll charge, it's fair, and this is what I'll pay, it's fair? Or is that just wishful thinking that's never going to have a place in reality?
I'll give you my theoretical answer.
Yeah.
The answer is never.
Never.
And the reason why is, and you and I will remember this, but many others won't. Shipping industry typically for the last 200 and something years has had conferencing.
Yep.
And it started, 200 something years ago, maybe, I can't remember the exact history, shipping from India. And conferencing basically allows all the carriers to charge the same rate. And you differentiated getting a customer, not getting a customer based on the type of service you're able to bring.
Sure.
And this stabilizes the market and removes the peaks and troughs. Because the EU decided it was anti-competitive. And in its own way, yes, it is anti-competitive, but it's anti-competitive to protect the trade, both the buyer and seller, to remove these peaks and troughs.
Yep.
And so once Europe got rid of it, America was left no choice, and an era went. And then we went to this, spot market and fixed market. And the problem is then you don't have any limiter.
Right.
So it becomes 100% driven on supply and demand.
Yep.
And the only way to limit it is to interfere artificially. And it's a moving target. It's very hard to do. The true argument is if you're going to go to a true spot fix market, you can't touch it. You have to let it rise naturally and fall naturally. And the other issue is you have to kind of compare then what happens with with freight rates in an international market. Then you need to establish an exchange, and you need someone to like the SEC to monitor the exchange. The FMC is not funded in such a way to do that. We don't have digitally quoted rates based on capacity and loading on each vessel. And as an industry, we're not prepared to do business that way.
No.
And so there's on either side of the equation, we don't have a solution, and so you just have to leave the market to float and fall on its own, which means we're going to be constantly moving through these boom bust cycles until we do something to limit it. Yeah.
Biggest prediction for the next year?
Strike in January.
You think so?
I think it's a good chance.
Okay. Be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure either party left the negotiations 100% happy. I think there's a lot of unsaid, unfinished, business, and I think it's going to take some further, negotiations to get there.
Got it.
And it's just like two kids scrapping in a schoolyard. Just because a teacher separates them doesn't mean there's peace in the accord.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, thanks for coming by. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mark.